Welcome to Big Data and Healthcare. Today we will be discussing healthcare data and some potential applications it has towards personalized medicine.
To make sure everyone is on the same page, I'd like to begin by defining health data. Health data is individual or population data related to a health condition, cause of death, or quality of life. Health data includes clinical, environmental, socioeconomic, and behavioral information.
Healthcare data can be both unstructured and structured. At this point, I think we need to define what exactly big and small data are.
So Michael, can you define the difference between big and small data as it pertains to a clinician?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And so for healthcare data, there's really two main components, big data and small data. Big data is on a more grander scale in both volume and possible scope. So it's a lot of data and it really affects patients on a population level. Small data, on the other hand, is much more limited volume, much more manageable. These are the individual lab data we have for patients. So it's a little bit more personalized and it pertains to specific patients rather than a population as a whole.
The difference seems intuitive, but the point about big data being for institutions and small data being for an individual is interesting. Toral, as a researcher, what are some of the potential sources of health data?
Health data exists in many places. This makes it difficult to compile and extract into a central location. Some potential sources of health data include the EMR and EHR paper records and wearables. However, the best source of health data is a centralized data warehouse.
Health data can be used to better treat patients and administer care. Analyzing the data can be used in clinical research to improve patient outcomes and analyze trends in healthcare. Big data will allow organizations to collect, analyze, and leverage data more effectively, and influence how care is delivered, resources are managed, and teams operate with each other.
So clearly big data is an important tool and it's going to be very important in the advancement of the healthcare field. So let's now discuss how this tool can affect people at different aspects of some of the major new trends in healthcare and big data. Alright, so Michael, as a provider, how do you think big data will be applied to creating new treatment methods for patients?
Sure. I think big data, there's really a lot of opportunities. On the positive side, you can come up with treatment algorithms, you come up with reminders, you can come up with a bunch of things that are really beneficial to the patient, and it decreases the cognitive load of the clinician. But what I'm skeptical about is really the implementation of such technologies. Already, clinicians are already burdened by a lot of alerts, a lot of information, and this could just really add to that. So if it's not implemented correctly, this can actually detract from patients and actually cause harm as clinicians are just burdened by all of these alerts. But the most serious issue that I think with big data that I have is that as doctors, we like to know how we came to a clinical decision. With the big data, with the algorithm, the doctor's not going to know how this algorithm got the answer that it came up with. And so because the technology is built on thousands of patients, but the patient sitting in front of me is different. So I think that getting doctors to understand the data is going to be something that's going to be a challenge.
Now, for a patient perspective, I'd like to throw it out to Carl, who is recording live from his patient room. Carl, what are your thoughts?
Well, as a patient, I like the idea of big data in healthcare sector since it gives us more personalized care. However, at the same time, the big data sounds boring if it is just something applying general algorithms to our care. As a patient, digital PHR apps offers me a convenient and user-friendly interface to track and manage my personal health records and detailed physician encounters at hospitals. Big data and a streamlined information system helps me to access lab reports, make payments online, and obtain more personalized care based on my care history.
Thank you, Carl, for giving us that perspective as a patient. Now I'd like to bring it over to Toral. What would you say as a researcher?
Sure. So with the application of data within research, I believe there's so much potential discovering new treatment methods. In certain fields, there are gene-specific treatments being created today that are based on big data and genome-wide association studies. For example, the CRISPR-Cas9 system is an emerging gene editing technique with the potential to eliminate HIV-integrated genomes, which could result in the complete cure of HIV and AIDS. Similar methods of gene targeting could be applied today to delay the onset or completely eliminate the effects of chronic diseases. I think this is extremely exciting because the study of big data is advancing precision medicine and the creation of individually tailored treatments. In addition, as biorepositories and EHR data become widely available, they can be combined to create very large data sets to address a more diverse range of clinical questions and be used for treatment methods.
Some people believe patient data, once de-identified, should be sold to allow others to use it. Michael, your thoughts?
I mean, I think this is something that's an interesting topic. I think that it's something that kind of has to be done. Data has to be shared in order to make new medical discovery and push the boundary of medicine, because how else are we going to find new discovery for patients? Whether it should be sold for monetary gain, I think this is an ethical question that can be addressed, at a different forum. But I think that the benefit of sharing data, finding new medical discovery to help patients vastly outweighs any risks.
Okay, so Carl, what about you as a patient? Is there anything that concerns you about your own personal data being sold to other companies?
Well, I'm concerned with patient security and ethics. For example, the enforcement of HIPAA. Those rules restrict the way that health plans and healthcare providers can use and disclose identifiable healthcare information in a PHR. Well, they also require covered entities to have administrative, physical, and technical safeguards in place to ensure that information in PHRs remains secure from unauthorized access and use.
Okay, what about you, Toril? Do you think this type of data would be very useful as a researcher?
Yeah, so in our research, we utilize healthcare data for genetic association studies. For example, we use the patient's blood sample to extract genotype data. Then we conduct an association study by linking the patient's blood lipid levels reported in the EHR. And by doing so, the relationship between rare genetic variants associated with specific genes and the blood lipid levels are identified.
However, Carl, can you let me know how you would best utilize any of your own data and patterns in your records?
Well, as a patient, I have no problem giving up my healthcare data for scientific research. However, I'm concerned about the data security as well as patient privacy. I don't want any of my personal identifiable information left for study. However, at the same time, I'm also worried about hacking and abusing of the collected medical data.
Okay, so now Michael, given what you've heard from Carl, do you think the PHR is useful for a clinician, or is it only important for the patient to see it?
Sure. I mean, I think the mobile healthcare data is a great source of resource for medical decision making for both the clinician and also for the patient. The patient spends most of the time outside the hospital, but we only really have data when they're in my clinic or they're in the hospital. And so this would give a more complete picture of the patient, allowing us to really drive medical decision making for the proper care for the proper patient at the right time.
Obviously, big data can be quite useful, but what are the challenges to big data applications? Michael, can you comment on this as a provider?
Sure, absolutely. And so I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier on, that I think big data has a lot of great application, can really push forward the boundaries of medicine and really deliver the right care to the right patient, but the implementation part is going to be the biggest challenge. Healthcare is one of the only industries where technology has actually made the doctor slower. And so an example would be if an algorithm tells me to do action A, but I choose to do action B, do I need to spend 5 to 10 minutes documenting it? What if something else happens with this patient, or what if I choose not to listen to the algorithm? Can I actually still bill for my services? Can I be sued if I go against the algorithm with the patient right in front of me because of something else about the patient that I think the algorithm is not catching? So I think that's a huge concern. The other thing is then, as a patient, would you trust in an algorithm that just kind of spit out a result for you? So as a doctor, would I really trust a black box that tells me you need to take action A with the patient? So you as a patient wouldn't be taking a medication if you didn't know exactly what it did to your body. And so I think there's going to be a lot of trust issues, and a lot of adoption issues with big data.
Okay, so Carl, to that end, what about you as a patient? So what concerns you regarding big data?
Well, as a patient, I'm concerned about how my data is used for research and study. I mean, balancing the conflicting interests of ensuring patient confidentiality with providing access to sufficiently detailed information for adequate research is a serious challenge to healthcare organizations.
Finally, Toril, what concerns you about big data being used in research?
Yeah, so although healthcare data is a great resource for medical research, it comes with many limitations that researchers have to account for. For example, there can be misclassification through incorrect use of things such as diagnostic codes, data entry errors, or missing data. In some cases, the information the researcher is targeting is also only available in the unstructured part of the note. Therefore, I think the creation of natural processing algorithms and rigorous language processing algorithms are necessary to fully utilize the healthcare data for research.
Now, I heard you mention unstructured data. Can you describe the difference between structured and unstructured data?
Yeah, so unstructured data is anything in a paragraph or text-based format. You can imagine how a computer could have a hard time utilizing this kind of data. On the other hand, discrete or structured data is something that's clearly defined, so the computer can easily link actions to it and understand what it actually means.
Okay, so as you can see, health data and big data is changing the healthcare field daily. So new findings and patterns are constantly being discovered that can potentially revolutionize the field. So one could potentially use health data to improve profits, cut down waste, and even predict epidemics. And in general, it's very important to use health data to improve patient outcomes and improve the overall quality of life for patients and providers themselves.
Health data can be used to develop personalized medicine options and optimize care at an individual level. Health data will integrate with research to identify key trends and potential solutions to the providers that they can incorporate into healthcare delivery. Clearly, big data has many potential benefits. However, big data also has many potential downsides. Regardless, big data appears to be the future of healthcare. One must wonder, however, does the good outweigh the bad?
How's that done?